Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari. Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari. Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana. Yamunatira Panachari. Yamunatira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Vishnupad Paramahansa Purajikacharya Ashtottara the Shri Srimad Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahansa Purajikacharya Ashtottara the Shri Srimad Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Samaveta Bhaktavrinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glory to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Okay, now I'm going to ask something unusual. It's this time of year. Can you put a couple of those cushions up vertically so it blocks more of that? You understand what I'm talking about? If someone happens to walk in, you're going to, yeah, that'll be better. And you'll have to reposition it. Thank you. Okay. Narayanam namaskritya narang chaiva narottamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jayamudiriyet. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, we should offer our respectful obeisances unto Lord Narayan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, unto Nar Narayan Rishi, the Supermost Human Being, unto Mother Saraswati, the Goddess of Learning, unto Srila Vyasadeva, the Author, and unto Srila Prabhupada, the Translator, Commentator, and our Spiritual Master. Nashta Prayesha Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatyuttama Shloke Bhakti Bhavati Naishtiki. By regular attendance in classes on Srimad Bhagavatam and by rendering devotional service to the pure devotee, all that is inauspicious within the heart is destroyed almost to nil, and loving devotion to the Supreme Lord, who is glorified in transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On this 4th day of May, 2022 in San Diego, a reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhakti-Vedanta Swami Prabhupada. And we are in Canto 5 entitled The Creative Impetus, Chapter 17, The Descent of the River Ganges. Text number 3. Tatak sapta rishiyas tat prabhavabhigya yam nanu tapasa atyantaki siddhire tabati bhagavati sarvatmani vasudeve nuparata bhakti yoga labhenaivo bhikshitan yartatma gatayo muktim ivagatam mumukshava iva sabahu manam adhyapi jatha jutar udvahanti. Okay. Translation. The 7 great sages, Marichi, Vasishta, Atri, and so on, reside on planets beneath Dhruvaloka. Well aware of the influence of the water of the Ganges, to this day they keep Ganges water on the tufts of hair on their heads. They have concluded that this is the ultimate wealth, the perfection of all austerities, and the best means of prosecuting transcendental life. Having obtained uninterrupted devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, they neglect all other beneficial processes like religion, economic development, sense gratification, and even merging into the Supreme. Just as Gyanis think that merging into the existence of the Lord is the highest truth, these 7 exalted personalities accept devotional service as the perfection of life. Purport. Transcendentalists are divided into 2 primary groups, the Nirvisheshavadis, or impersonalists, and the Bhaktas, or devotees. The impersonalists do not accept spiritual varieties of life. They want to merge into the existence of the Supreme Lord in His Brahman feature, the Brahma Jyoti. The devotees, however, desire to take part in the transcendental activities of the Supreme Lord. In the upper planetary system, the topmost planet is Dhruvaloka, and beneath Dhruvaloka are the 7 planets occupied by the great sages, beginning with Marichi, Vasishta, and Atri. All these sages regard devotional service as the highest perfection of life. Therefore, they all carry the holy water of the Ganges on their heads. This first proves that for one who has achieved the platform of pure devotional service, nothing else is important, even so-called liberation, Kaivalya. Srila Sridhar Swami states that only by achieving pure devotional service of the Lord can one give up all other engagements as insignificant. Prabodhananda Saraswati confirms his statement as follows. I'll say, you say. Kaivalyam nanakayate dudashapurakasha pushpayate. All right, I'll just read it myself. Durdandendriyakada sarpa patali prokata dangstrayate vishwang purna sukhayate vidimahindra dishtakitayate yat karunyakataksavai bhavatam tam godame vastumaha. Chaitanya Chandramrita 5. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has perfectly enunciated and broadcast the process of bhakti yoga. Consequently, for one who has taken shelter at the lotus feet of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the highest perfection of the Mayavadis, Kaivalya, or becoming one with the Supreme, is considered hellish. To say nothing of the Karmi's aspiration to be promoted to the heavenly planets. Devotees consider such goals to be worthless phantasmagoria. It should be phantasmagorias. Actually, believe it or not, phantasmagoria is singular. There are also yogis who try to control their senses, but they can never succeed without coming to the stage of devotional service. The senses are compared to poisonous snakes, but the senses of a bhakta engaged in the service of the Lord are like snakes with their poisonous fangs removed. The yogi tries to suppress his senses, but even great mystics like Vishvamitra fail in the attempt. Vishvamitra was conquered by his senses when he was captivated by Menaka during his meditation. She later gave birth to Shakuntala. The wisest persons in the world, therefore, are the bhakti-yogis, as Lord Krishna confirms in the Bhagavad-gita, 647. This one we can chant. Also you say, Yoginam api sarvesham madgaten antaratmana Shraddhavam bhatate yo mam Same yukta tamomataha. I'm going to read the revised translation, which says, and of all yogis, the one with great faith who always abides in me, thinks of me within himself, and renders transcendental loving service to me, he is the most intimately united with me in yoga and is the highest of all. That is my opinion. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnanandana Salakaya Chakshu Unmilatam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Sri Parampara. So, the descent of the Ganges. And we can see how those who understand the value of the Ganges are very ecstatic to have opportunity to contact the Ganges regularly. The Ganges has come down to Dhruvaloka, and these great sages, these 7 sages headed by Marichi, Vasishtha, and Atri, and so on, they just relish the fact that they can have the Ganges water in proximity, in which they can put keep it on the tufts of the hair on their heads. In other words, greatly honor Ganges. And this is the ultimate wealth, the perfection of all austerities, the best means of prosecuting transcendental life. So, this sense of appreciation for the opportunity and the contact, to be able to contact Krishna directly this way. How did the Ganges become so holy? Who remembers the reason why the Ganges is so holy? Yeah. Yes, so the Ganges water is actually leaking through from the causal ocean, from the spiritual, realm, and it washed over the feet of Vamanadev, who's none different from Krishna. So now it's permeated with all of this holy foot dust, and it's come down to earth. We're going to read about it. Eventually, comes down to earth, and it's been shown how it has tremendous, just on the material level, healing properties, prophylactic properties. If you take bath in the water every day, then you're much able to ward off disease and like that. What to speak of being washing off all your sinful reactions and coming closer to Krishna. Some of you haven't been to Mayapur and don't know that the Ganges flows right there. In other words, it's right there on our property. Just like, you just walk off the property and you're in the Ganges. So it's very auspicious to go and bathe in the Ganges, which I had an opportunity to do. Ramapati Prabhu lives on the Ganges, probably his apartment. You can see the Ganges from his apartment, I'm sure. Yes, right next to, yeah. So this, and so we're not on the Ganges. Are we deprived? No, we're deprived of the Ganges, but we're sitting here in the temple of Krishna. So this Charanamrita is directly the same potency. What's the Charanamrita made from? It's made from water that bathes the lotus feet, right, every day. And so it's highly potent. These little drops of yogurt, whatever we drink there, is highly potent for purification. So cultivating the appreciation for such things as the Ganges water, Charanamrita, the temple, and most importantly, the holy name. The Hare Krishna mantra has all these potencies. Plus, it acts much quicker and can give them the greatest value that there is, which is pure love for God. Ultimately, devotees are not worried so much about liberation. Liberation means you're liberated from all your karma, good and bad, and you are free from birth and death. So it's interesting, because when you go through the Bhagavad-gita, you see that this is a value that's spoken of highly. In the third chapter, we're just going through karma yoga. And so much of it is about how you can get free from karmic reactions, which means moving a significant step toward liberation. Because the bottom line is, in the Vedic culture, that you don't want to come around again for birth, old age, disease, and death. Everyone knows that. I mean, is there anyone in India who doesn't believe in reincarnation? Only American tourists, probably. Huh? Anyway, and that changes everything. It changes. It should change everything about your calculation of what's important in this lifetime, and how you can move toward that, and maybe achieve liberation in this lifetime. You see. And I always like to point out the Kumbh Melas and the Magh Melas. A lot of that, I mean, the huge crowds, millions and millions. Sometimes in the big ones, tens of millions gather, right? At the Prayag, at the Triveni, where two famous rivers come together, the Ganges and the Yamuna, and one that's not so famous because it's subtle, not so manifest, Saraswati. That's called Triveni. They all converge at Prayag, Allahabad. Right? Prabhupada lived there for 13 years. He said he saw 2 or 3 of these big festivals. So what's the big draw to come there at a certain time of year, which is always January, right? It's cold. It's cold there. There's a wonderful account of how Prabhupada took the devotees to one in 1970, I think it was, or 71. The first group who visited was it 70? 76 also, yeah. 6 or 7. So yeah, and you know, Prabhupada called it a big fair. Big fair. It's so big that they have to have roads, post office, wires, electricity, and the army comes to keep peace, to have law and order. So it's huge. And the big draw is that you can get liberation if you bathe at the Triveni at just the right astrological time, But devotees go there. Now, illustrating the truth of this, what Prabhupada explains in the purport here, that kaivalya nadakayate. For devotees, the liberation of merging into the Brahman and losing one's individuality and senses and mind and everything, and just to be pure consciousness, and in this way to be liberated from birth and death, it says is worse than going to hell. Worse than going to hell. Because if you're in hell, at least you can call out Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna. But if you're in the Brahmajyoti, you have no tongue, you have no voice, you have no brain. You're just conscious that I'm conscious, that I'm not taking birth. But as explained in the Bhagavatam, by the demigod's prayers, this famous prayer, probably will quote this all the time, I just heard of it this morning in the lecture. Ye nye ravindaksha, they're speaking to Krishna in the womb. All the demigods gathered in secret and offered these prayers. 2nd chapter of the 10th canto. Ye nye ravindaksha vimukta maninas tvayasta bhava navishuddha buddhaya. Aruha kutrena parang padang tatapatang jado anadrita yushmarangreya. So what they say there is that besides the bhaktas, they've been glorifying the devotees and Krishna. Ye nye adavindaksha, O lotus-eyed Lord. Vimukta maninas, so right at the beginning of the verse is saying, they think they're liberated. They have the idea that they're liberated, those who he's going to describe in the verse. But they're averse to you. They're not, they don't even believe in you as a person. They think that you're a lower manifestation of the Absolute. So, and therefore their intelligence is impure, is not purified. Abhishuddha buddhya. And so those few who can commit to this process, who through great austerities, means repressing the senses, wrestling with the mind, so that you're able to come to the Brahmabhuta platform. They may rise up to that platform. Param padam. This is the position of Brahmabhuta, beyond the modes of nature like that. But then patantyado. They fall down again. Anadrita yushmarangreya. Because they're averse to serving your lotus feet. So this is very significant, because as devotees, as aspiring transcendentalists, first coming in contact with devotional service, we should be serious about liberation. This is why Krishna says, Janma Mrityu Jara Vyadi Dukkha Doshana Darshanam. This is in the 13th chapter between 8 and 11, I think. Krishna lists a whole list of aspects of knowledge that we should try to have. First is amanitvam. Who can guess what that means? Humility. Yeah. Okay. I'm going to have to start bringing up Bhadran. Anyone but Vijay. Who can say who it is? Yeah. I mean, amanina manadena. You know that famous verse? Amanina, without pride and giving honor to all others. So, amanatvam, adambitvam means free from hypocrisy, free from false pride. And on and on. And then one of the elements, is about 20 of them, is this janma mrityu jara vyadi dukkha doshana darshanam, to always see, to be aware of the evil, of the problems of birth, death, old age, and disease. It's a given. As soon as you're born, you're going to die. And in between, you're going to get old and get sick. Or you have the option of dying prematurely. You have two options. Or you can get old and sick and die. Great. What else? So that's what it means to have a material body. So as a preliminary motive, which can be a very strong motive, we should aspire to get out of this and go back to Godhead. Our liberation is back to God. We don't want to merge into the Brahma-Jyoti. But that idea that, hey, I don't want to do things to prolong the agony of my stay in this world, that's okay as a preliminary motivation. Because what's it going to do? It's going to get you to chant Hare Krishna seriously, right? And do all the processes. So there's nothing wrong with that. And it comes up in different places in the Bhagavad-gita. But ultimately we learn from Lord Chaitanya in his Shikshastra, Nadanang nadanang nasundari. Not only does he want wealth, the usual things that people aspire for, either materially or even spiritually, yoga, whatever. I don't want any wealth. I don't want any big followers, to be a political leader or, whatever. Sundarim, beautiful wife. Kavitam, which is described in different ways. The fruits of mundane piety that come from following all the rules and regulations of the Vedas, going to heaven, O Jagadisha, Kamaye. In other words, he's praying to Krishna, and it's interesting the names that are used. He's not using a name for Vrindavan here, This is a preliminary. He's not using a Vrindavan name. He's using a name for God in general. Every member of any religion knows that God is the Lord of the universe, right? But the significance is, you can give me anything. You're the Lord of the universe. But I don't want this. I don't want this. I don't want the usual thing. And then he says, he implies, Mama Janmani Janmani. I don't even want freedom from birth and death. As soon as you talk about repeated births, you say, I don't want liberation. And what do you want? Govardhan says. With what? Yeah, but the quality of the service, those two phrases. What is it? No. Ahoitiki. Yeah, ahoitiki bhakti, without any material motive. That's the big difference between the bhaktas and all other transcendentalists, or even worshippers of the gods. They're not ahoitiki. I'm worshiping Indra, so I can join him in Nanda Nandana and enjoy like anything. Or I'm worshiping, I'm practicing this process from Shankaracharya, and so I can go to emerge into the Brahma-Jyoti, and I don't want to take birth again. That's a big value. I don't, So ultimately, Lord Chaitanya says, I don't want the usual material things. I don't want even the so-called spiritual things of liberation. I just want to serve you birth after death. I'm ready to come back here. Like Bhaktivinoda Thakur, just give me, I don't want to, and merge into the Brahma-Jyoti. I'll take any birth. Let me just be an insect as long as it's in the house of a devotee. He wants devotional association. Like what did we have yesterday with Dhruva, that Balaram's class, right? And I quoted that verse. So Dhruva is now facing Vishnu. He can get anything he wants. Vishnu has come on Garuda and empowered him to offer these prayers, touching him with the conch. Remember that? He's offered these beautiful prayers. And then it says, well, what do you want? I once did a little seminar on Vandanam, which includes prayer, one of the 9 processes, right? With Ramapad Swami in Chicago many years ago. And so I studied some of the prayers in the Bhagavatam. It's full of prayers, Kunti's prayers, Prahlad's prayers, all the prayers everywhere. And I saw that there were 3 basic principles or characteristics. Usually the prayers start out with offering obeisances, like Kunti. Namasye Purusham Dvajam. I offer my obeisance to the Supreme Person, you know. And then glorification. You offer obeisances, glorification, and then you have a request. Just like the Tulsi prayer, you know, that we sing, right? You offer obeisances, you glorify, oh, you're most intimate to Krishna, intimate servant of Krishna. Whoever gets your mercy has his wishes fulfilled. That's a glorification, right? And then there's the prayer. Of course, that's kind of up front. Radha Krishna Seva Pava E Abhilashi. I'm aspiring for service for Radha Krishna. But then he repeats, please make me your follower. You know, let me serve you just like the other. In other words, you're praying for very intimate service. So the bowing down, glorification, and prayer. So in this prayer of Dhruva that I read yesterday, after he gets the darshan of Vishnu, what does he pray for? He's already bowed down. He's already glorified. Now he's asking for something. Bhakti moho pavahatam trayime prasango. He's saying, let me have the association of your great devotees, in whose hearts and from whose mouths is flowing, the purest devotion, the river of intense devotion. And of course, what are they going to be doing? Glorifying Krishna all the time, you know. So, because by their association, now he brings in this. This is interesting because he brings in, I'll easily be able to cross over this ocean of birth and death, which is full of, very memorable phrase, blazing fire-like dangers. You know, we look all around us. We can see the dangers. War, climate change, you know, tornadoes ripping up your house, earthquakes. You know, there's blazing fire-like dangers everywhere. So I am recognizing that, but I'm going to cross over. You know, but how is he going to cross over? Because I'm becoming mad to hear about your glorification. So Lord Chaitanya, you know, that's a byproduct. That's a byproduct. That's not his main desire. But once you get the taste for hearing and chanting about Krishna, and we've been inundated, what does it say about the Goswamis? They're saving us from the blazing fire of Mayavad, of impersonal adoration, by pouring down on our heads songs about Govinda. Govinda Gan Amritai. You see? You forget all about liberation. He said, just let me have the association of devotees so I can hear and glorify your name, form, qualities, pastimes. That's so absorbing and so enlivening that you forget about everything else. So, that's what this verse is about, that Prabhupada quotes here, this famous verse by Bodhananda Saraswati from the Chaitanya Chandramrita. Now, Prabhupada points out here, it's maybe not so obvious, he's going through other groups that are aspiring for something. Starts out with Kaivalyam Narakayate. First is those who aspire for liberation by merging into the Brahmajyoti and losing their individuality. That's Narakayate. That's worse than going to hell. Why? Because there's no chance of bhakti. Bhakti requires 3 things. Bhagavan, of course, the bhakta, and the process of bhakti. So there's no Bhagavan with his form, beautiful form, and pastimes in Brahmajyoti. There's no bhakta because you've lost your individuality. You're just pure spirit soul. You know, I am that I am. And whereas this, therefore, there can't be any bhakti. So that's hellish. You'd rather go to hell where at least you can, you know, call out the holy name. You have a tongue. You know, you may be burning, but just look at Prahlad. I mean, didn't he suffer hellish punishments? He's boiling in oil. His father tried to boil him up, make him into a pakora, right? But what did he do? He just so intensely remembering Krishna and chanting his glories, he didn't feel a thing. He was totally protected. Say Baharidas Thakur, beating for 22 marketplaces, big, strong guys, with the, you know, Sticks. Didn't feel anything. Chanting. So, that's the first thing. Tridashapur Akasha. Then the whole idea of going to heaven. Tridashapur. There's 30 or 33 million, so many heavens you can go to, aspire to go to. And they're much described in the Karmakanda section. The glories of Nandana you can enjoy, youthful body, so many women, It's like an Akasha Pushpa. Who remembers what Akasha Pushpa? Beside Vijay. Akasha Pushpa. Sky flower. Do you like a sky flower? Like the song? It smells pretty good, huh? We don't need a sky flower. We got the gardens here. Maharaj has got money bandhanis. So, in other words, it doesn't mean anything. It's meaningless. It's not like, seriously now. Here we are, aspiring bhaktas. We're at different levels, tasting. Does anyone really think, if I can only go to Nandana, I could dance with those nymphs, Give me a break. No one wants that, right? So that's the mercy of Lord Chaitanya. And then there's this Durdandandriya Kala Sarvapatali Prodkata Dangstrayate. That's all about the yogis. So you've got the Mayavadis, you've got those who want to go to material heaven, and then you have the yogis who want to get different powers and whatever, So, but the first thing is you got to control the senses. That's the big deal. Durdantendriya, they're difficult to control. That's what that means. And Kala Sarpa, they're just like these poisonous snakes. In other words, the average person, conditioned soul, his consciousness is being bitten by all these senses because the senses are saying, go here, go there, try to enjoy here, do that. And you're being victimized in that way. But for the devotee, the senses are still there. We still want the senses, but they like the senses. So they look just like the ordinary senses. They look like ordinary snakes, but without the teeth. They're harmless. They can't hurt you. Rather, they help you in engaging in devotional service. Where would we be without the ears? Just like, without my voice, which is a main sense, an active sense. For devotees, that's the most important active sense. We got the hands, we got the feet, genitals and excretory, but the main one is the voice. So, we need the voice, right? Kirtan, right? Everyone singing wonderfully in tune, nice loud kirtan. So, Kalasarpa, so use this very ingenious analogy. So it's the snakes are there, but the teeth are pulled. They're not poisonous, but they can still function and do the things that we can engage them in. They help us. And so what's the result? Vishrang Purna Sukhayate. Just imagine, this means that the devotee sees the whole world full of joy. Why? Because he sees Krishna's pastimes everywhere. But the real quality of the devotee, in Lord Chaitanya's line, is that it's like Prahlad. We can chant Hare Krishna and other vibrations and immerse our mind in ecstasy. Prahlad said to Nrsingadev. He says, what is it? Naivod Vijay Pradadaraja Vaitadanyas Tvad Virya Gayana Mahamrata Magnachitta. What a wonderful thought. That any place we are, we can sing the powerful glories of the Lord. Virya Gayana. And immerse our minds, dive into an ocean of nectar. Amrita Magnachitta. And we see this was Prabhupada was doing. He was writing his books, speaking with devotees, glorifying, chanting, singing. It's always in ecstasy. It works. So therefore, the devotee sees the pastimes of Krishna everywhere. This is one of the things. And therefore, he sees it full of joy. But he's also lamenting, as Prahlad, for all of the fools and rascals who don't have Krishna. And so he works hard to give them that joy. Isn't there a saying in India? What is it? Sarvam Sukhino Bhavantu? Something like that? Yeah. Let everyone be happy. It's not like Prabhupada points out, for the heavily conditioned souls in a mode of passion and ignorance, they take happiness from others' unhappiness. Sometimes there's a disease like that called sociopathy, or sadism, But what's the devotee? Pada dukkha dukhi. We're unhappy to see others happy. And parasukha sukhi. We're happy to see others happy, but really happy in Krishna consciousness. And so we're working for that under the orders and instructions of Lord Chaitanya, the spiritual masters. And in this way, we become happy by others. When someone takes up Krishna consciousness, or someone who you progresses in Krishna consciousness, it's a source of great happiness for real devotees. So that's, and Vidhi Mahindra, this is a classic Prabodhananda Saraswati. He says, the Vidhi, that's Brahma, Mahindra, that's Indra, and others, Adi, the demigods. He sees them no more worshipable or significant in his life. You know, we honor them, but he sees them like insects. That's what Kitaya means. In other words, we're not going to approach them for anything. We've already got Krishna. We've already got our sadhana, we got our line, you know, like that. But of course, Brahma is, you know, head of a sampradaya. So that's but the point is that they don't hold any, you know, we're not in awe of their possessions and their position and trying to emulate them. So what brings all this about? That's the last line. This is very important. Karunya kataksha vaibhavatam means empowered by the merciful sidelong glance of Lord Chaitanya. And that comes from being an enthusiastic member of the Sankirtan movement, which includes our own personal sadhana and sadhana bhakti, but also the effort to help others, book distribution, going out on Harinam, so many ways. You know, when people come to the temple, you know, we get some nice group. They're starting to come again for the evening class. And of course we have the lounge program, the Sunday program, and these festivals, to really be concerned with trying to bring people along in their Krishna consciousness. You know, and there's always a spectrum. People who are just checking it out and come for once and don't come back. But there's others who come regularly and are interested and are candidates to become serious bhaktas. And we should be eager to give them association and friendship and books, of course, and instruction. So that's how you become empowered by Lord Chaitanya. That's what he is most pleased by, to see our own advancement and seriousness and our eagerness to help others in this important, essential path. Who knows about this? You know, the world is fraught with this. You know, we read about the modes of nature. But the modes of nature, passion and ignorance, are so prominent, and the result is climate change. What does that come from? It's just exploiting nature, not realizing that divine nature. We have this book, Divine Nature. It's divine because it's connected to Krishna. It's controlled by Krishna. And when we see it that way, then we'll try to live in such a way in harmony with nature and use it to glorify Krishna as much as possible. Simple living. Simple living, high thinking. Now it's complicated living, you know. This pandemic, I was reading how, yeah, we can look forward to more pandemics. Why? Largely because of climate change is pushing the different animals who were, say the southern part of America to northern part. It just get too hot. They're trying to get a little cooler. So they're associating, now suddenly they're living close to other animals, and this is the way the viruses get exchanged. And in other words, it's all due to the degradation because the human beings are not following the principles of devotional service. And being satisfied with little and being unsatisfied with their level of Krishna consciousness and being greedy for more and more realization of Krishna. That's the proper use of greed. You know, and the proper use of desire is desire to please Krishna and see that he's pleased. Not kama, which is we're reading now in the third chapter, the end of the third chapter. Our eternal enemy, which kama is nothing but prema that's been curdled and changed because of contact with the modes of nature. And so when we understand that, then we need to use our desires to dovetail them with Krishna's desires. What does it mean? Guru mukha purna bhaka chittite koriya aikya arna koriya manayasha. Who besides Vijay knows the meaning of that? Prakash, you know. You haven't come into Guru Puja, that's the problem, he's forgotten. Guru Mukha Padmavakya, the words coming from the lotus mouth of the Guru. Make them one with your heart and don't desire anything else. In other words, all these ideas that we've had before we came to Krishna consciousness, it's all Maya. And we have to recognize that and drink in these words of the Shastra and try to act on them. And understand, yes, we're coming up on this verse in the Bhagavad-gita. Tasmat tvamanyanyado niyamya bharatarshava. Therefore, the first thing you got to do, you can control your senses. Because if the senses are out of control, you become victimized by lust. Kamesha, Krodesha, Rajogana, Samud, Mahashano, big, all-devouring, sinful enemy of this world. Arjuna asks, what is it that forces us to act seemingly against our will, even though we know that's good for us? Well, we ourselves, or we've known people who are addicts, alcohol, drugs, porn, gambling, which is available everywhere. So these can take over your mind and force you to do things that I'm being destroyed, but I can't stop. Christians, it's karma, it's material desire, all its different varieties. So what's the solution to that? We have to become attracted to Krishna, and we've been given the medicine, the holy name. If we take it, we chant with concentration and devotion, then Krishna will free us from this bondage. And that's just the first step. And it'll give us more and more joy, more and more realization. Don't forget, the holy name is also the life and soul of transcendental knowledge. So not only do you get knowledge just from chanting, but you get interest in the Shastra, and the knowledge just pours in. You're accepting it like a guy someone on the desert who's finally drinking pure, cool water. That's how we should feel when we read Prabhupada's books. So, any comments on these points?
Hare Krishna.
Okay, go ahead, Vijay. Maybe we'll get some locals there. Go ahead.
Yeah, Dravida Prabhu, Dandavat Pranams. My question is, you know better than me that the gopis are recognized as the best bhaktas, the best devotees of Lord Krishna. But still, what happens is that when the gopis hear the sound of the flute of Lord Krishna in the middle of the night, they immediately abandon their domestic affairs, husbands and children, and go to the forest to surrender to him. So based on this, my question is, what kind of sense control is this?
The best kind.
The best kind. Would you explain or elaborate, please?
Yeah, this is one of the reasons why we're enjoyed not to discuss the gopis so much, because it is inconceivable in our any kind of material, from any kind of material conception, how this is idyllic. I like to tell the story sometimes how I was in an airport once. I was waiting for my bag at the carousel, and I was dressed as a devotee. I always travel that way. And one fella came up to me and said, "How can you worship somebody, some god who's so immoral and dancing with other men's wives, in the middle of the night?" And what could I say to someone like that? He didn't wait. He went off. So this is the total misconception, and it's because we're the classic analogy, which you don't hear so much anymore, but it's important to understand the frog in the well. There's a certain logic called the frog in the well logic. Is that basically it means we see everything from our own crippled perception. We don't understand how covered over we are, and we judge everything and we see everything through these misconceptions. So naturally our conclusion is wrong. So there's in the Chaitanya Charitamrita chapter 4 of the Adi Leela, there's a wonderful explanation which really enlighten any devotee who's sincere and understand the difference between lust and love. He has a verse about that also. So that verse is important. Atmandriya Vritti Vancha Dari Prema Kam, Krishna Vidya Ityacha Dari Prem Nam. That the desire to satisfy one's own senses is called kama. But the desire to satisfy Krishna's senses is called prema. So the gopis, their unstoppable urge, and compulsion, if you will, to go out, despite all of the moral things. They have their children, they have their husbands, they're either eating them. There's different varieties of ways to show how they were forced to go out. They couldn't even dress themselves properly. So the point is that they had to go meet Krishna. Their love for him was so great. And what was it that they wanted to do? They wanted to serve him for his pleasure. That was the compulsion. Not that they're going to enjoy sex with him, but that they're going to serve his desires as he wants. That's why he's calling us. And so that's prema, the desire to satisfy Krishna's senses, though it may look like kama. And sometimes it's even called transcendental kama, like that. But it's not. So that's why Lord Chaitanya exalted them above others, because they were ready to. They were so saturated with Krishna prema that there was no question of following the ordinary injunctions of household life for ladies, which is exactly opposite that. Honor their husbands, take care of their children. Don't go, be with another man instead of the. And Krishna even starts preaching that when he comes. He's testing their sincerity. Says, "Oh, it's very nice you come here. How can I, what can I do for you? What can you do for us? You just called us with the flute." So they're kind of stunned. And then he starts speaking that for a lady, chastity is the most important thing. They have to take care of their children and honor their husbands and the husband's family. These petty adulterous affairs, women don't go, you won't go to heaven that way, So this is how he's speaking. So it's interesting because the Brahmins' wives, don't forget, they also came out to the forest to see Krishna, And couldn't restrain themselves, right, with the food packed up in the tiffin. So anyway, so after he says this, they say, I forget the Sanskrit now, but it's, you shouldn't speak such cruel words to us like this. And then they have their prayers and their argument why, you ignited this fire in your hearts with your flute and with your sweet words, and now you should extinguish it, by dancing with us. So Krishna relents. He agrees. Fine. He says, okay, and so they start to rasa dance. But then they get a little proud. He disappears. I'm not going to get into the whole thing, But when the Brahmins' wives come out, he does the same thing. He says, oh, this is not right, You should, you can't stay here. Your husbands are waiting. They have to complete the sacrifice, And so they say the exact same words. In the Sanskrit, it's the first line of the verse, which I forgot the Sanskrit. You shouldn't speak these cruel words. We've come out here. We love you. Like that. So Krishna says, he insists. Now you go back because the husbands have to perform their sacrifice with the wives, right? The Brahmins, like that. So they'll reject us. And no, they won't. They won't. They won't reject you. And sure enough, when they go back, they regard them as their spiritual masters because they know that they went to Krishna, worshiping him. So, but the gopis didn't go back. They insisted on saying, no, it's impossible. We can't go back. You called us. So they're the most advanced. And the reason why their morality is the highest because, what is it? What is that line? Dharma. The one that the Dharma is enunciated by the Supreme Person. Dharma, thank you. Dharma sakshat bhagavat punitam. That Dharma is enunciated by the Lord. And so these gopis are the most dharmic. They're the most religious. They're the most moral. Because we're ready to give up everything for the pleasure of God. And that's the most moral thing you can do. Because God sets the standard of what morality is. So the gopis are the emblem. Aradyo Bhagavan Vajeshataniyas. There's a nice verse about the teachings of Lord Chaitanya, the summary. So one should worship Bhagavan. Okay. Like that. Vajeshataniyas, who is the son of the king of Braja, son of Nanda Maharaj. And one should also worship his holy Dham, Arajo Bhagavan Rishtanya Tadama Vrindavanam, which is holy because he enacted his pastimes there. Then the question is, how should one do it? And the answer is in the second line, as the gopis, Ramya Kachadupasana Vardavadu Vagena Yakalpita. Ramya Kachadupasana. Ramya, that's the gopis. Vrajavadu, I'm sorry, Vrajavadu are the wives or the ladies of Vrindavan. And so, so what's the evidence for all this? This sounds pretty radical. Srimad Bhagavate Pramanam Amalam. Srimad Bhagavate Pramanam Amalam. And then what's the goal of it all? Prema Pumarto Mahan. That little phrase itself is often quoted. Is that prema, pure love for Krishna, which is characterized as ready to satisfy his senses, is the ultimate goal, the ultimate artha of the Panchama Purushartha, the fifth. And the last line says, these are the teachings of Lord Chaitanya. I don't know anything beyond that. This is in a book called, this is also the Hari Bhakti Sudodhi. So to serve the gopis, to meditate on them, just like we sing every morning with the Tulsi prayer, let me become your maidservant. Tulsi is also one of the intimate servants of Krishna. Is the highest goal for any transcendentalist. So the mundane morality is there, is necessary for those who are conditioned to have no understanding of transcendence. There has to be that in society. But ultimately, what really counts in human life is progressing, going back to Godhead, which means becoming Krishna conscious and being aware of his ardent desires. Just like Lord Krishna's desire as Lord Chaitanya, that in every town and village my name will be chanted. Here we are in this remote village. It may be called a city, but it's San Diego. So our responsibility is to spread the holy name here and the knowledge of Krishna through his books. And that's the highest morality. That's the desire of the Lord Chaitanya. So that's about the best I can do with it, Vijay Krishna Prabhu.
Yes, Dravida Prabhu, if I may, in accordance with your answer to my question, where the love of the gopis for Krishna is completely selfless. Yes,
absolutely. That's the whole idea. The desire to satisfy Krishna's senses is prema, and they exemplify that desire better than anyone else. Yes. To satisfy Krishna's senses.
Thank you very much.
Yes, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Okay, it's a little late if there are no local questions. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hare Hare.